Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a review for Emperor of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. I am going to be having a spoiler-free section of my review as well as some spoilery discussion parts, so definitely check the timestamps down below. But before we go ahead and get on into the review, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Thursday, Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down the description box below for links to all of my social media and my Patreon. Emperor of Thorns is the third book in the Broken Empire trilogy by Mark Lawrence, which is an adult grimdark fantasy series that I started this year and was pleasantly surprised by how much I liked it because I had heard a lot of bad things. I don't know about bad things, but like off-putting things for me personally about the main character, that he is a sociopath, he's violent, and he's just like an all-around unlikable character. And yes, while he is very violent and sociopathic and very unlikable at times, and I found myself absolutely loving reading from his point of view, reading about his journey, being inside his head, even though it is sometimes a very dark and twisted place. I do have spoiler-free reviews for Prince of Thorns and King of Thorns, books 1 and 2, if you're interested in checking those out before going on and continuing with this review. But Emperor of Thorns definitely picks up from where book 2 ended, but now we are following Jorg as he is 20 years old, and he has set his mind to becoming the emperor of this land. Currently, there is no emperor, and it's all of these different kingdoms that are scattered throughout and kind of govern themselves. But the kings of this land have the opportunity to vote in an emperor, and every time they meet together and cast their votes, no one ever wins, so no one is ever elected emperor. So this book is about Jorg doing what he has to do to ensure that he gets the votes to be inserted as emperor. Jorg is also currently married to Miana, his 15-year-old wife, and she is super pregnant with their first child, so Jorg becomes a father in this book. Just like the previous books, there are flashback chapters. So we have our present day timeline plot, and then we have 5 years previous plot that kind of shows how parts of Jorg's present tale got to where it needed to be. So in the flashback plot, we see Jorg kind of going to different parts of this world, namely Afrique, and kind of developing relationships with the rulers there. And then we also get a point of view in this book from Chella, who is the necromancer, and we actually learn more about her and how she serves the dead king. And we don't have Catherine's point of view, which is Jorg's aunt, who's basically his same age. It's his aunt by marriage. We do not have her point of view in book 2. We had her point of view through diary entries, and then something happened at the end of book 2 with her. So we're definitely not inside of her head like we were in book 2. I will say that book 3 is the slowest out of all of the books in my personal opinion, which is kind of surprising because you'd think that the third book in a trilogy would really go off with a bang, and it does. There is an action scene at the end. The climax happens really close to the end, but if you compare it to like the length of the book, which is about 400 pages, or my edition, there's really not a lot of action. It's a lot of political maneuvering. It's a lot of Jorg kind of finishing the mission that he started in book 1, because all in all, this is a revenge tale. Jorg has just been treated like crap by his father, by his uncle, by a lot of people, and he has had to rise above not only people that are trying to oppose him, but also his own internal demons. So this is a revenge tale, but it's also a personal growth tale, in my personal opinion. We also see a lot more fantasy elements in this book than we have in the previous 2 books. This is a fantasy series, but in my opinion, the fantasy elements are fairly sparse compared to like a Sanderson novel or a Brent Weeks novel. And in this book, like I said, fantasy elements are more prevalent. We get to learn a lot more about the connection between the living world and the dead world. We get a lot more of that necromantic ability. We learn more about the dead king. We get these kind of, I don't want to say zombie-like beings, but kind of like undead beings that are ruled by the dead king, kind of go to invade the different kingdoms and just what that all involves. So we do have these undead beings, this necromancer, and all of those magical arts that are incorporated more so into this book than the other 2 books. There were several themes that I liked in this book, or I thought were well executed. The first one is obviously revenge. This is a revenge tale. But then there were also some internal conflicts that Jorg was dealing with that I really thought Mark Lawrence handled well. So the first one is his internal conflict over becoming a father. So his father really did not treat him the best, and Jorg was worried that he was going to be a bad father to his son just based on the type of person that he is, because Jorg has no qualms with being violent or hurting people. And even his wife, Miana, he acknowledges that he cares for her. He feels affection for her, but he definitely is not in love with her and he's definitely not faithful to her. So he knows that he's not a good person and he's worried about what kind of father he would be. And it's just interesting watching like the birth of his son and then his feelings towards that. And then as the rest of the book progresses, we see kind of Jorg step into the role of a father, understanding what that looks like and how much he actually does love his son. So I thought that was an interesting avenue that Mark Lawrence took with regards to Jorg's fatherhood. I definitely think that this book touches on the theme of redemption. So, like I said, Jorg is a horrible character and he acknowledges that he's a horrible person, human being. And in the end, Jorg is faced with a situation to kind of help the different kingdoms by uniting them under an empire to fight against this dead king, or kind of letting things go as they are and not doing anything and letting everybody die. So he kind of takes on the role of the hero by doing what he has to do to become emperor. Is it by necessarily honest means? That's arguable. But he understands that he needs to do what he needs to do. He needs to become emperor because he needs to fight against the dead king. So he is redeeming himself and that he's looking out for the greater good. So I thought Mark Lawrence did a good job like juxtaposing Jorg's actions. So we have the fact that people can do both good things and bad things and kind of showing that multifaceted aspect of human nature. Now I want to touch on some spoilery things, and the first thing is Mark Lawrence's world. So at the beginning of the trilogy, Mark Lawrence kind of gives us little crumbs as to the truth about this world, and we slowly learn that this is our world, it's Earth, and it is a post-apocalyptic type situation. And we have in this world the remains of like human technology, and we have bombs, we have nuclear devices, we have leftover buildings, and the characters in this future refer to us, their ancestors, as the builders. And it sounds like from some of the technology that Jorg uncovers that we were more technologically advanced when that world ended as we are today. For example, it sounds like consciousness has been uploaded to some sort of like mainframe. There are almost like AI beings, but they are mirrors of humans that actually lived, and they're called ghosts, or that's what Jorg calls them. And Jorg has a lot of interaction with these different ghosts because they were humans at one point, but they're not anymore. And it's just kind of like, I think of it as like uploading a consciousness or uploading all the stuff that was in their brain to some sort of computer that interacts with Jorg. That's the way I took it, which is something that, as far as I know, we can't do nowadays. So Mark Lawrence, in a fantasy book, introduced some really interesting technology that I really thought was pretty cool. And then he also brings in the question of human beings destroying ourselves because of technology. Because obviously, we were super, super advanced at one time. We destroyed ourselves somehow, and then the world regressed back into like this medieval type situation and is going to have to relearn everything. And I just thought it was a really interesting concept. It kind of made me think. But I know a lot of people don't like when an author will take like influences from our current world or that type of thing where they place a fantasy setting like on our current world. So if that's not something that you're into, then like you might want to avoid this, because Mark Lawrence does have a lot of influences, brings in a lot of influences from like obviously our current world, our current history, geography. A lot of Christianity and a lot of Christian references are in this book. So he definitely draws a lot from like real life and then combines in those fantastical elements. And just two other small things. So I kind of realized it was almost towards the end when Jorg is like, I don't even know what he was doing. He's about to fight the dead king. And then someone says that the dead king was super young. And I was like, oh my God, the dead king is William. It's Jorg's brother. So it was an interesting choice, I guess, to make the dead king William. It kind of just was another way for Mark Lawrence to have Jorg kind of confront his inner demons and accept his failures because he blames himself for William's death. It really didn't explain how William became the dead king. If it did, then I completely missed that. So I would have just liked more background information about how William got into that position, maybe. So Yeah, I don't know about that. And then we also had Catherine. So in book 1 and 2, I was led to believe that Catherine was going to be like a super, super important character, and at the end of book 2, Jorg thought she had died, and I'm like, there's no way she could be dead. You know, they had such a good dynamic. Jorg's obviously in love with her. She is very intelligent. She's got magical abilities herself. And then we get into book 3, and she's just kind of like a character. Like, she really doesn't offer anything to the story, to Jorg. And I was really disappointed by that because I felt like Mark Lawrence had written her as like a really interesting character and then just didn't do anything with her in the 3rd book, and he could have. And I was disappointed by that. And there was really no closure because obviously Jorg is in love with her and there's something going on between the two of them. And I just would have liked more exploration into either their relationship or Catherine herself or her magic or I don't know, something. I just was felt like left wanting. All in all, I really enjoyed Emperor of Thorns. I thought it was a really good conclusion to the trilogy, and I've heard that this is Mark Lawrence's weakest trilogy. I do own the Red Queen's War trilogy and the Book of the Ancestors, so I am ready to read more Mark Lawrence. I'm very excited to see how his writing improves and get immersed more in his worlds. In the end, I ended up giving Emperor of Thorns 4 out of 5 stars, and I can't wait to read more of his work. All right, guys, let me know in the comments if you have read this book, this series, or some of his other series and what you thought of it, and I will see y'all in another video soon. Goodbye!